5 years ago, I was paying $65 a month for my subscriptions. Today, those same subscriptions cost $111, and I don't even use half of them anymore. That's why now I use Rocket Money to manage my subscriptions for me. The app gives you a list of all your subscriptions and reminds you of upcoming payments so you're not hit with any surprise charges. On top of that, it also sends you alerts when subscription prices go up, so you always know the price you're paying. If you decide you no longer want a subscription, you can cancel it right from the app. No customer service needed. And the best part is, Rocket Money even reaches out and tries to get you refunded for some of the money you lost. On average, people that cancel their subscriptions with Rocket Money save $378 a year. And overall, Rocket Money has saved its members $880 million in canceled subscriptions. Stop wasting money on things you don't use. Go to rocketmoney.com/cancel to get started. That's rocketmoney.com/cancel. rocketmoney.com/cancel.
The holidays are expensive. You're paying for gifts, travel, decorations, food, and before you know it, you've blown way past what you were planning to spend. Don't start the new year off with bad money vibes. Download Rocket Money to stay on top of your finances. The app pulls your income, expenses, and upcoming charges into one place, so you can get the clearest picture of your money. It shows how much to set aside for bills and how much is safe to spend for the month, so you can spend with confidence. No guesswork needed. Get alerts before bills hit, track budgets, and see every subscription you're paying for. Rocket Money also finds extra ways to save you money by canceling subscriptions you're not using and negotiating lower bills for you. On average, Rocket Money users can save up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. Start the year off right by taking control of your finances. Go to rocketmoney.com/cancel to get started. That's rocketmoney.com/cancel. rocketmoney.com/cancel.
Welcome to the show, where today we have a growth mindset special around the topic of potential. And it's not just me who gets excited about potential. In fact, Pope John the 23rd was obsessed with potential, and he has a great quote to kick us off. He says, "Consult not your fears, but your hopes and your dreams. Think not about your frustrations, but about your unfulfilled potential. Concern yourself not with what you tried and failed in, but with what it is still possible for you to do." And for me, potential is a really fascinating concept because we never really know how much potential we have. And often we can miss opportunities due to social pressure to conform or our own internal worries of failure. And then, of course, the moments where we simply make the wrong decisions in life or realize too late what we should have done. As they say, hindsight is a wonderful thing. Well, to help me today on the topic of potential is one of the best people on the planet to be talking about it. Heather Moyse is a 2-time Olympic gold medalist in bobsleigh, and she is also in the Rugby Hall of Fame as the leading try scorer of the 2006 Rugby World Cup. And she is a Canadian legend. But what is crazy about Heather is that she didn't start professional sport until she was 27 years old, and she almost missed her entire athletic potential. She didn't lift a weight before she was 27 because she didn't want to look buff. But since then, she's not only built Olympic winning biceps, she's built a deep set of psychology-informed mental models that helped her reach the successes that she's had, and she's also helped many others along the way. She is so in love with the area of potential that she even wrote the book Redefining Realistic, which is honestly a great read. This is an archive episode from when I interviewed Heather 2 years ago. And as it's the Winter Olympics going on right now, she was on my mind because, I happen to know a bobsleigh gold medalist now. And so I gave this episode a re-listen, and it felt very worth a revisit. In the episode, we cover a little of her history today, but mostly we dive into different concepts for realizing our potential, and we discuss things like energy takers and self-sabotaging behaviors, the psychology of performance, and how to reduce regrets. She is an absolute blast and has truly been there and done that. She doesn't just talk the talk, she walks the walk, and I think you're going to learn a lot today, so stay tuned. We kick off on the concept of how Heather first came to realize that potential is not about talent that you do have, but talent that you don't have. yet?
So I had a coach. His name was Garth Turtle. After an athletic banquet, I walked into his office just before going home with like this armful of trophies or awards or whatever. And I was expecting him to say something like, congratulations, or well-deserved, something like that. And he just kind of looked up and shook his head and he said, oh, Heather, you have so much potential. And I was like, dude, you're being very weird. And so I just turned around to leave. And he said, but just before you leave, Heather, potential is just talent you don't have yet. And so that comment literally had no effect on me at the time. And it actually didn't have any effect on me for 10 years. I mean, I grew up in a small town, but as soon as I started bobsledding, and it was just like all this doubt came, like, I've never done this before. I'm learning a new sport. And I'm just like, potential is talent you don't have yet. So how do you fill in that gap? How do you know what you're really capable of? And so for me, my whole business right now is around helping people discover what they're truly capable of, because my life is kind of proof that you're capable of way more than you give yourself credit for. And my parents were very supportive and very encouraging. There was never any limiting beliefs passed on by them. I feel very fortunate that I grew up with parents who weren't sports fans, because I feel like with my genetics, I could have very easily, had I had crazy sports fanatic parents, I potentially could have been pushed into levels of sports and doing things that felt pressured to do sports. And the joy might have been taken out of sports. And I probably would have burnt out a lot earlier. I kind of joke saying I'm lucky that they could have cared less about sports. They cared that I and my siblings were doing things that we loved. And they were excited to know that I could do something at career level or professional level for sports. I was really happy that I wasn't ever fulfilling a lifelong dream they had, or feeling any kind of external pressure from them, feeling that the love and support that they had for me and my siblings and for what we were doing was absolutely unconditional. And by that, after I finish speaking at events, I often get questions from parents, and a lot of them are kind of these parenting questions in and around with their kids being involved in sports and how do you help get them to the next level. And I love these questions. But there are some questions that I have to be very intentional with my answer, because based on how that question is framed or presented, it almost makes me cringe on the inside for their child. It makes me cringe thinking about the pressure that child must be feeling to perform for their parent, and not necessarily because they actually love it. And so I often share this story about when I first started bobsledding. The first race on the World Cup circuit just happened to be in Canada. It happened to be out west in Calgary. And my parents were like, oh my gosh, well, the first World Cup, it's so close. We're going to fly out and watch it. And I said, Mom, I have no idea if I'm going to be racing. Like, I won't even know until like literally 2 days before the race if I'm the one racing or not. So you shouldn't come all like, no. And I said, it's expensive. Like, you can't fly all the way. I might not even be racing. And she said, Heather, you should know by now, we're not coming out to watch you. We're coming out to support you. And that line is so powerful. And I have shared that with so many parents, because that is the true definition of supporting your child. Do you still go and get just as excited to go watch your child play if you know that they probably aren't even going to get on the field or on the court? If they're just riding the pine? Are you going to be like, oh my gosh, that was a great game. Like, your team did amazing. I'm so proud of you as being part of this team. Or are you going to ask why they didn't get to play, what the coach is like, all these different things? Parents can make or break like how far a child goes in what they want to do and the joy that they get out of sports. And for some kids, unfortunately, they feel like the only validation they get from their parents, the only time that they maybe even get to spend with their parents is if they perform, or even doing a sport because their dad loves that sport, or because their mom grew up playing that sport or whatever. And that's a lot of pressure for kids to carry.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely dives into like attachment theory and also like growth mindset of you teaching them that they have the skills and being like, you have the skills, you should be on the team, versus it's so great that you bothered to try or whatever. Interesting. So backtracking, you mentioned like small town problems. Like, I don't necessarily feel like you could grow up in London but still be in like an environment where no one expects to get anywhere. And like one thing, so my sister had an art scholarship to a really good girls' private school in the UK, but her husband just went to like the normal state school. And he just says like there's such a big difference between like her friends and how they've lived their life just based on what they think their potential is. They just sort of swan about just knowing that they can do stuff, Whereas his friends just don't have this mentality that they can just go out in the world and get good jobs or do cool things.
You're right. It's not so much geographical location at all. It's what our environment, but also the people in your environment, and also the things that you've been directly exposed to and directly exposed to as seeing as possible. That's why it's so hard for some people to get out of their current situation or neighborhoods, because they don't see anyone else who's done it. And for me, I just have to be clear, just because I grew up in that small town, I'm not blaming the small town at all. My blame is that I wasn't exposed. There's no blame really. But the reason is that there weren't Olympians training around me, people training around me to go to some upcoming event. Like Olympians, they were TV people. They weren't everyday normal people like I considered myself to be. So it's not that I ever said, oh, I could never do that. It's just that it never occurred to me because it wasn't right here. Now, I knew I could grow up to become a doctor. My dad was a doctor. I could grow up to become a kick-ass housewife because my mom was. Like, she's mother, captain, volunteer of everything, like could run the city. Those kind of options were limitless. Just kind of like, I didn't actually think if I wanted to go to university. I just knew I was going to go because everyone in my family had gone. Like, it was kind of just assumed because that's the path that I was on. So I talk to a lot of people and we talk about choices, and we think we are autonomous in making our choices. And we are to a point, but we only make our choices within the boundaries of that environment and those direct exposures. We only make our choices within the boundaries of what we actually believe as being possible. We don't pursue things that aren't within those boundaries of possibility. And so what I feel like my job is to help kind of poke holes in those boundaries, poke holes in that resistance to change or resistance to thinking beyond those boundaries.
So I think sort of just trying to work out what are just your autopilot thoughts and expected options versus like what's actually possible. In the same way, like just physics, then humans are just stuck on like the 2D plane of the earth. It's not 2D, but I can't walk out the window and just hover 5 meters above the air. Like, I am stuck on the floor wherever I am. I can jump up for like maybe 50 centimeters above where I'm at, but I come back down straight away. Like, I'm always stuck on the ground in like your thoughts. Well, I can imagine I'm like Michael Jordan, but I can't think that I'm Michael Jordan because I'm not. Like, my brain doesn't do that. In the same way that I just don't think thoughts that I don't think that I could think, which sounds kind of lame, but sounds like some idiot mindset bro being like, dimensionality of your thoughts.
Yeah. Well, there's a thing, you were talking about physics. I started looking at the issues that we have with change, why it is so hard for people to change. Even if it's a change we really want or really know that we need, why is it so hard to change when it's really just a bunch of choices? And I was like, oh my God, this is so much like inertia. People are stuck in their tendencies. They're either stuck on that rat race and like treadmill to go, 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 and they can't get off, and then they go to burnout and then get sick and whatever, because they don't know how to slow down, or they know how, they just are driven to stay. That's their tendency. And it's the same thing as people where I'm just stuck on this path, this daily grind, and it's how do you get off it? And when I was looking at it, I was like, oh my God. And then I stumbled across a concept in behavioral sciences, like human sciences, called behavioral inertia. There's actually a thing called behavioral inertia, which keeps us doing what we're doing. And we're actually drawn to continue to do what our natural tendency is to do. So even if we overcome that inertia to make that change, and we can stick to that new diet or stick to that new training program or stick to that new morning routine to start that side hustle, or, stick with whatever it is we want to stick to, we want to change. All of these, there's still that friction that's wanting to pull us back. So we still have that inertia and that friction to overcome in order to make lasting change. And the component within that inertia and the friction when it comes to behavioral inertia, this wasn't in the report, like in the actual sciences. She didn't dive deep into this at all. But this component that's the same in physics is mass, like how heavy something is, the weight component in friction, the weight component in inertia. And so the mass, when it comes to behavioral inertia, I think is influencers. And we think of outside influencers that, these social media marketers and all these things that help make our choices. They influence our choices. But the other influencers are our core beliefs, our core values, our sense of identity, and our assumptions. All of those things are the things that will keep dragging us back. So even if we initially make that change and we're like, oh my gosh, yes, I'm on a roll. I've done it for a month now or whatever, 3 weeks and all that stuff. It's as long as we can still overcome that friction of pulling us back, of that comment that our stepfather or that our teacher or that girl in the corner said from when we were in high school or when we were 11 or whatever, that comment that basically makes us feel like we don't deserve that, or that we're not worth that path, or that we can never amount to anything. Whatever those comments are, if we can't overcome that constantly long enough to a point where that all of those choices then becomes your new inertia, until we do that, then you're always struggling and fighting against and always kind of getting dragged back to our normal state. So it's the same thing as moving forward, like the rat race, on the treadmill, these go type A, like in business, whatever. They may have that core belief that if they do not do that, if they do not provide for their family and they do not work that hard, then they are worthless, or that they don't deserve something, or that their family won't love them, or that, there's no validation. Whatever that core belief is, it is driving and fueling whatever behaviors we're doing.
I've done that social pressure personality disorder one that definitely spoke about the concept of the reason you might do things. And there was a whole case study on someone that basically was just following success pathways just to sort of try and please others rather than doing anything for themselves. And yeah, there's just so much of that is just due to our expectations of what other people will think of us, which is ridiculous.
Unless it's an absolute phobia, all of our fears are rooted in the lack of connection, of judgment, of ridicule, of isolation, of being shunned by other people. And so that's where our fears are rooted in. It's not really failure or success or even trying. It's what we assume that any of those will bring. And if we fail, then people will judge us. If we try, people will judge us. If we succeed, people will judge us. It's whatever's rooted in those things. It can certainly hold people back from discovering what they're actually capable of. It's the same thing as someone saying that they're going to take time away and just go away by themselves and kind of recharge their batteries. Like, some people won't do that because they're worried about what people will say. Oh my gosh, she thinks she's so just important and deserves this time off. Or who does he think he is to take a week off and go to the mountains or, go on this retreat or something? Like, we're all worried. We're all worried about what other people will think.
Every so often, I try to zoom out and ask whether my money habits are actually pointing somewhere, anywhere, or just reacting month to month. The long-term view matters, and Acorns believes that everybody's money has potential. If you want to see what your money is capable of, their potential screen makes it easy to see the power of compounding. You can sign up in minutes and automatically invest your money, even if all you have is spare change. Acorns will grow with you, supporting both big and small goals across every life stage by promoting consistent habits that add up. You can also quickly adjust how much you invest daily, weekly, or monthly so it stays realistic. If you sign up now, Acorns will boost your new account with a $5 bonus investment. You can join over 14 million all-time customers who've already saved and invested over $27 billion with Acorns. You can head to acorns.com/psychology to download the Acorns app to get started. Paid non-client endorsement. Compensation provides incentive to positively promote Acorns. Tier 2 compensation provided. Potential subject to various factors such as customers' accounts, age, and investment settings. Does not include Acorns fees. Results do not predict or represent the performance of any Acorns portfolio. Investment results will vary. Investing involves risk. Acorns Advisors LLC and SEC registered investment advisor. View important disclosures at acorns.com/psychology. Do you know what kills business security besides hackers? Well, complexity. Companies buy 5 different tools, none of them talk to each other, and suddenly your IT person spends more time managing security than actually securing anything. Our advertiser NordLayer solves this by combining VPN, access control, and threat protection in one platform, so no hardware, no complex setup, and you're secured in 10 minutes. They've also partnered with CrowdStrike to bring Falcon endpoint protection to small businesses, so enterprise-grade security without an enterprise IT team, all built on zero trust principles where only the right people access the right resources. Plans start at just $8 per user per month, and Growth Mindset listeners get 22% off yearly plans plus an extra 10% off with code GrowthMindset10. There's a 14-day money-back guarantee, so the only risk is staying vulnerable. Check out nordlayer.com to see how simple security can actually be, or use the link and coupon in the description. Code GrowthMindset10.
You didn't start a business just to keep the lights on. You're here to sell more today than yesterday. You're here to win. Lucky for you, Shopify built the best converting checkout on the planet. Like the just one tapping, ridiculously fast acting, sky-high sales stacking, champion of checkouts. That's the good stuff right there. So if your business is in it to win it, win with Shopify. Start your free trial today at shopify.com/win.
I'm currently writing an episode on the concept of like, things that sound really lame to work on. Like I'm working on my enthusiasm or something because it's such a life skill, but it sounds like it doesn't compute to say that you're doing it, but it actually makes sense to work on and get better at. And like things like that, you're like, yeah, like, there should be so many things that you don't get taught at school, but you should know for life, which is really fascinating. And I liked the way you spoke about mass and inertia, because I dove into that analogy in kind of a slightly different lens, but more almost the opposite, rather than like the behavior patterns we're stuck in, more like the general issue with people doing sort of very small things and not developing any mass or inertia, and like people changing career like way too fast, or like just being stuck in sort of like Instagram, like, okay, I need to be like traveling to like all these places and just going somewhere for like a few weeks and trying to work remotely the entire time rather than actually like developing any friends and living in one place and all this sort of stuff. And you don't actually work on something big. And like, if you want to be a writer, maybe you want to write weekly for 30 years rather than like do it for 3 months and then go and try and pursue a different career. And like the lack of inertia that people are developing with that lack of attention span these days. Which is funny how you kind of had like the exact same analogy, but the opposite way. And I'm like, but it totally makes sense as well in terms of our habits.
It just comes down to what our natural tendencies are. And so part of to get over our inertia is, for some people, it might be making, and I think that's why a lot of people make extreme changes, is because it's so far away from the norm that they feel like they won't be pulled back as easily. But sometimes those big ones, for some people, are harder to maintain. So it's almost recommended to take these smaller steps until that actually then gets adopted, almost like habit stacking or doing all these things to make that the new norm, and all these little tricks and hacks.
Identity change, some of it can be really much easier to do very slowly, and some of it can be a bit more of like a hard, I'm a vegetarian, kind of whatever.
So talking about some of those belief changes, for me, it's about lightening that load, like the formula, in order to overcome the inertia and friction. On this side, force has to be greater than the inertia and the friction in order to make a change in physics and behavioral science. If the force is actually a combination of our motivation and our energy, then it means that has to be bigger than our inertia and our friction. So the motivation, which is the reason why you're doing it. So that's why Simon Sinek talks all about this why. Like the bigger the why, the easier it is to overcome this inertia. But we all know that motivation is like, it can't be up there 100%. And the same as our energy levels, right? When we're so tapped out, when you're tired and when your body, when your mind, when all that stuff is down and your energy is down, then that's why we revert back to the cookies in the cupboard instead of the carrots in the fridge. So we can either try and increase our motivation, increase our energy, or we can try and decrease the inertia and the friction. And to decrease those means decreasing the mass. Now, when I'm saying decreasing the effect or the influence of those influencers, like the core beliefs, your assumptions, your fears, all those things, to me, it's a matter of just poking a hole in them. And it's poking a hole in your disbelief, these beliefs that are holding you back, or your identity, for example. It's the meaning you attach to your identity and what people like you can do or people like you can't do. Well, nobody in my neighborhood does that. People like me don't ever go to university, or I grew up in this kind of family, people like me. So really, it's just a matter of asking these questions that just poke holes in that resistance. And for one, it's just like, are you sure? Like the easiest question is, are you sure? Is to poke that initial hole in it. Like people like me don't do that. Well, are you sure? Another one would be, says who? Like, who says that people like you can't go to university? Or are you sure that single moms can't also have a side business? It pokes a tiny little hole just so that you can kind of see a little bit of the possibilities, like, And then I talk about the how factor. So as soon as you get that hole poked in there, then you flip over to the how factor. And it's like, instead of can I do something? Don't ever say, can I do something? Because it only gives you a binary answer of yes or no. And when you have a can I do something, binary yes or no, if it's something you really, really want to do, then of course it's going to seem so big and so huge to you. And so you're probably going to be like, yeah, probably not. Right? Like if someone for example, wanted to be the number one podcaster in all genres in the world, and they're like, well, can I do that? Someone starting off might say, no, can't do that. So then they won't even try. But if you say, how can I? Just adding the how can I? Then it all of a sudden, like, how can I? How could I do that? It would be like, what would be the steps? And you're automatically thinking of solution. And then the other one is when you're setting your goals, instead of setting a goal as some binary success failure, like number one podcaster in the world, success or failure, you set it as a spectrum. And as soon as you say, it's not about achieving it or not, it's about how, again, you're in the how factor. So how close can I get? It actually takes the pressure off you. And it also disempowers the naysayers. So anybody who's like, oh my God, as if you're really going to do that, you can very easily say, yeah, you know what? You're probably right, but I just want to see how close I can get. That is it. It shuts them up. They have nothing else to say. It even kind of shuts up the little voice of doubt that we all have in our brains, right? And you're like, you know what? Yeah, I might not make it, but I'd like to see how close I can get. And coming 5th in the world or 10th in the world or whatever, it's way better than if you just hadn't done anything at all.
I think some people are more scared of failure than others because, I've always been just excited by like possibility and what could happen. But one thing, I guess, on that is that it can almost feel like rude to tell someone that they're not meeting their potential, as in to be like, oh, but you could do this. And like, you feel like you're saying that what they're doing isn't good enough. And for some people, it can be kind of offensive. So I do like the way that you pose the questions of like letting them come to the conclusion rather than you sort of telling them that they're not good enough because of, I have always struggled with that myself because I always see the potential in people. But then how do I tell people without being offensive of like saying that they've just got a useless life compared to what they could be doing?
My goal, I guess, is to help people realize, as long as they know that they're capable of way more than they think, like we're all capable of way more than we think we are. So I think those questions help them decide and help them see the possibilities. Like all you have to say is, oh, I could never do that. Well, are you sure? What evidence do you have that shows that you can't do that? And if they go off and start listing all these things, you'll be like, okay, you could always pop up another person or pop up. Now, say if you're choosing to stay where you are, or if you're choosing to take this path, then that's fine. Just it's about accountability. It's about owning that. If you don't want to go to the gym, dude, don't go to the gym. Like, I don't want you to go to the gym if you don't want to go to the gym, but just don't say it's because you don't have time, or don't say it's because of whatever. Just say, I'm not going to the gym because I don't like going to the gym. Our choices, they reveal our priorities. So you might as well just own the consequences of your choices. Even if you see the potential in somebody, I don't want someone to become the president or the prime minister or the whatever just because they can do it. Like, I came up with this little flip the script thing where I was just like, just because you can doesn't mean you should. So that is where the happiness factor comes in. That's where the fulfillment factor comes in. I had a client who was a very outwardly successful lawyer, very inwardly feeling not successful, feeling very hollow, unfulfilled, kind of like, how did I get here? Like, just, it was just momentum. Like, just got caught on that, go treadmill, whatever, promotion, corner office, raise, partner, like all that stuff. And it's just like, yay, like those feelings are great. Those dopamine hits all the way up. And then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, this is my life. Like, what am I doing? How did I get here? So for me, it's just like, yes, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something. And just because you have so much potential in one area doesn't necessarily mean that's the right road for you. But you may also have a lot of potential on this path and on this path and on this path. And it's just a matter of choosing which path you want to go on.
It's a good question around the concept of like, are you doing something because you want to do it or because you don't know how to stop?
Or because you haven't given much intentional thought. I had someone come up and talk to me about my decision to not have children. She has 2 children. And she said, I guess I'm feeling very overwhelmed because even though I thought about having kids, I never thought through it. She said it affected her career, her ability to travel, all of these things. But yet we live in a society where she would never be able to admit that out loud to anyone else. Also, because she does love her children, but, to admit that, like, she probably feels shame anyway, just thinking it. It was interesting to hear her say that. And it actually got me thinking about, I wonder how many And I know I'm not saying that, all parents don't love their children, but we grow up in a society where it's expected. Like, I never got pressure from my parents or from my family, but I still went through a big struggle of trying to figure out, like, am I only thinking about having them because I grew up assuming I would have them? Do I really want to have children? Do I not want to? Like, I'm not against it, but do I really want that? Like, this whole conflict. And it's literally just because of the assumptions that are embedded in us and our core beliefs on what we're supposed to do or people like us do or whatever. So it's crazy.
In the same way that you talked about mass and inertia for people that like need to sort of break out of what they're doing. And I spoke about probably the opposite of people need to stop breaking out of what they're doing and to stick with something. I feel also with generations as in like your generation was more like, we should all have kids. Whereas our generation is like, are we going to have kids? I don't have time or money for kids. Like, what the hell? Why do I even want kids? And we definitely have a fertility problem now in the lower ages. But I do wonder, in terms of saying what people like us do, because you never know what it's going to be like to have kids until you have them. It's a really hard decision. But for some things like this, if you can find someone that is really like you and work out what they think about it, because like some people genuinely didn't actually like having kids, but some people obviously do. And just working out how you can find people that would actually represent your own opinions and find out what they thought is currently like my best way of working out. But
you can definitely ask a lot of people, but they might not be overly truthful because they'll feel like they're going to be judged. The fear of being judged by somebody and someone admitting that they might wish that they hadn't had kids is like, would just be the most horrific thing in our society. Like, oh my God, it's a process to go through. But I just think that I don't think that many women or many couples go through the process of actually thinking about how it will change their life. They think about maybe how the good things will change, but they also go into it, I think, just assume like, with an assumption, like it's not, do you want to have kids? It's how many kids do you want to have? Like, yeah. I don't know how we got on to kids, but
it's fascinating. But I am now wondering, like, do you think if you hadn't been like an elite athlete through your 30s, that you might have considered kids more than you did?
I think I would have, but I think partly the time, me waiting till I was older also got me doing more research and being more about the intentionality of choices. And when I'm working with clients and that sort of thing, and realizing that people have followed paths just because of the momentum of where that path is taking them and not because they've actually chosen it or even discussed or thought about how that changes everything else. So I don't know that it was necessarily sports. I just think that the time in terms of doing research and coaching and that sort of thing, that's just altered my realization. I guess it's given me the realization that there's so many choices that we're making that we're not really choosing. For example, the average person has between 12,000 and 60,000 thoughts a day. And approximately an average person, it's like 2,000 choices a day. But 95% of our brain activity is all automatic. It's behavior patterns, thought patterns, emotional patterns, body function patterns, all these things. 95% is automatic. So that's a lot of times why people feel stuck, or it's also a lot of times where people feel like you're just on this momentum. Like momentum we talk about as being a good thing. It's not always good. If you're getting swept away on a path that's not really where you want to be on, then it's not really a great situation to be in. So that I think is the biggest thing, is that you mentioned autopilot earlier, right? Like that's our inertia. Our inertia is autopilot. Like whenever we get drawn back to our natural autopilot ways. And autopilot is good in the sense of being more productive. Our brains don't get as tired to do simple menial tasks that we do every day. But when it comes to bigger life stuff, that's where we just need to pump the brakes a little bit and ask those questions, like, or to each other, even more so than ourselves. Because we won't notice it so much in ourselves, but we'll start noticing it in other people. Like the reasons that they'll say for not doing something or for doing something. And then you'll start saying, well, are you sure? Says who? And then you need to get a buddy who will start checking you on your own self-limiting beliefs and your own, identity blockers and stuff like that.
Yeah, there's lots of stuff that we just have automated, like attachment styles are just automated, like how you just decide to create emotions around someone else's behavior, but doesn't necessarily mean that it's correct or a useful cycle for you to be going through every time. Yeah, fascinating. In terms of limitations and things from others, then, you have a really nice section in your book around like energy takers, and you have lobsters and naysayers. Can you elaborate on that? I really like that bit.
Yeah, I kind of generally, when I talk about it, I just talk about naysayers in general because most people understand the concept of naysayers. They have this pessimistic belief on things and they believe that things just aren't going to go well regardless. They just kind of see the bad and they suck the energy out of the room and all that stuff. Lobsters are a little more subtle. So I grew up on the East Coast in Canada where the lobster fishery is huge, massive industry here. Some people call them crabs in a bucket. So it's a similar theory. But if you've got lobsters in a tank, it doesn't even have to be very shallow. Lobster will look like it's crawling out of the tank and another lobster will crawl on its back and literally kind of pull it down. They could all probably get out of the tank, but they kind of crawl on each other and pull them back down into the water. Now, this is just a very accurate depiction of us in society in so many ways. Sometimes you'll see it in boardrooms. Sometimes you'll see it in neighborhoods. You'll see it in families where someone's trying to do something good and people will be supportive to a point, and then they will just say comments to try and pull people back down and to make them feel less than and to kind of discourage them from going anywhere further. And so we just have to be careful about those people. It's just sometimes just their eye roll, or it could be just as simple as a head roll. Goes from an eye roll to a head roll, but it could be a comment, it's overhearing something. Just those people who are just trying to pull people back down. And a lot of that is in Jen Sincero's book. She had this quote, and I put it in my book because I loved it. I'm going to butcher it right now, but it was something like, people don't want to see you succeed because they've spent a lifetime convincing themselves that they can't succeed, like they can't do it. And it's true, right? Their own core beliefs or their own, assumptions and fears or whatever have limited them, have sabotaged their own path, their own success. And so when they see someone else who's kind of going for it, it bothers them because it's a reflection of their own, they stop themselves from going for it.
Similar to what I was saying earlier around, like, it can come across offensive when you tell people like they aren't making enough of their potential and that they could be doing something more exciting or better.
That's a similar thing, right? Like, you don't want to tell someone that they might be leading an outwardly boring life, but it is because it's bringing them joy because they know they're providing for their grandkids or their niece or nephew, or, we can't judge anyone's circumstances, but I just want people to know what they're capable of, and then they can make intentional choices that they will be happy with. Because if you're making choices that you're happy with, then that's when you lie in your deathbed and have no regrets. But you can't regret something if you had no control over something else. The regret comes from basically missed opportunities or unfulfilled potential.
Hence why you want to be cutting out the energy takers, lobsters that drag you back into the problems.
Exactly. Someone quoted, you're a product of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. And that is like your level of success will be a reflection of the 5 people you spend your most time with. And some people grow up in families of lobsters, of naysayers, of energy drainers. And there are people who walk in the room and just suck the energy right out of the room as soon as they walk in there. And then there are other people where they walk in and they not necessarily showboaty. They could just walk in and just kind of walk off to the side. But all of a sudden, the energy in the room is just higher. And the people that make you feel better when you're joining them for coffee or when you're going to have a call with them, not the ones who you're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to cut this one short? Those are the energy takers that you want to try and kind of avoid as much as possible.
Raise the rudders! Raise the sails! Raise the sails!
Captain, an unidentified ship is approaching. Over.
Roger. Wait, is that an enterprise sales solution?
Reach sales professionals, not professional sailors. With LinkedIn ads, you can target the right people by industry, job title, and more. Start converting your B2B audience today. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started today at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
Whether you bond over streaming binge-worthy videos, watching sports recaps, video gaming, or by unplugging altogether, the 2026 Lincoln Nautilus Hybrid helps keep you connected throughout your journey. Learn more at Lincoln.com. Available connectivity features and functionality vary by model. Package pricing, trials, and term lengths vary by model. Video streaming and games are only available while parked.
The number one resolution for people last year was to save more money, but nearly half gave up by February. Don't let that be you. Download Rocket Money to reach your financial goals this year. Track your spending, cut waste, and automate savings in one simple app. Rocket Money shows you all your expenses and categorizes them, so you know exactly where your money's going and where you're overspending. From there, the app cuts waste by canceling your unused subscriptions and lowering your bills. No customer service needed. With that money freed up, the app will automatically set some cash aside for your goals, whether it's an emergency fund, paying off debt, or saving for vacation. Rocket Money's got you covered. Users love the app, with over 186,000 five-star ratings. And on average, users can save up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. Make saving money a priority this year. Go to rocketmoney.com/cancel to get started. That's rocketmoney.com/cancel. rocketmoney.com/cancel.
I wrote about this as a concept that it's not always just the 5 people that you're around being like them in terms of like, let's say if I go skiing, if I'm with people who are awful at skiing, I will spend the entire time on one leg or spinning or doing something and working on my skills. So I still get better. If I'm with people who are amazing, like I get better. If I'm with people who are as good as me and have like a real attitude towards getting better, I'll do lots of fun stuff. That's like the best time. But if I'm with people who are as good as me, but they just want to go down the hill straight, I don't have time to do anything that's fun. I don't get any better. They're the people that hold me back when I'm skiing. And so it's just who are the people that hold you back and stop you from being yourself? And actually someone that's completely different to you might not hold you back at all.
Exactly. It's not about physical skills at all. But that's why a lot of people have these mastermind groups, right? Like these mastermind groups or going these coaching calls and stuff so that they're not all in the same industry or the same business, or they have completely different skills, but it's not about that. It's the people who actually, are excited to see someone else succeed, are excited to brainstorm and help them through and figure out things, are excited to help them see the possibilities and aren't judging them for pursuing possibilities. Because if you're just pursuing goals where you know what the outcome is, they're not very exciting. Like you may make progress, but very incremental progress, and that's fine. But if you pursue the possibilities, because again, I'm saying possibilities because there are no guarantees. There are no guarantees in sport, in business, or in life. So everything we're pursuing really is pursuing the possibility of it happening, right? There's no guarantee it's ever going to happen because anything does happen. So we're always pursuing possibilities. By being around people who have no problem with you pursuing a possibility with no guaranteed outcome at the end, those are the people who will lift you up and make you feel excited. Like even if they know nothing about it, but they're excited to hear about what you're doing or just interested to hear about the research that you're doing before you're starting off in this new venture that they've never heard of before.
Back to me saying you should work on your enthusiasm. Hi, go me.
Yeah.
Nailed it there. Yes. Well, one thing that you said around like the concept of energy takers, it really reminded me of, like I said, Ben Hunt Davis's book. He has like a thing called Bullshit Filters. Or I spoke to Kyra Condie. She has like a fused spine, but she became an Olympic climber, and she makes sure she doesn't ever get taken down by like destructive feedback. And I just feel like to get somewhere, they kind of have to have some kind of mental model around this area, but they also have to have some kind of mental model around like just being able to perform under pressure. So I was wondering what kind of mental models you have in that area, because that's something I've always found interesting. Because no Olympian arrives on the day of like having to perform and being like, oh, I don't feel like it today. And yet as a writer, you can wake up some morning and be like, I'm not inspired today, so I'm not going to bother writing. But sometimes you just have to perform. But how do you make that happen?
To understand that when the Olympian comes to race day at the Olympics, they've gone through all of the training, which is kind of like the author sitting down to write, right? All the training days are the things that are producing this end product. It's kind of that motivation on every single day. So for me, a big one for those trainings and going through training when I just wasn't motivated, because let me tell you, I was like not motivated to train at all since I didn't grow up going to the gym and had a mental block against lifting weights and all of that stuff. So I really had to be motivated. So basically, I just developed this philosophy of no regrets equals no excuses. So for me to get there and do it, meaning if I got to the end and just didn't make the team or came fourth, which we did once, or come second and just lose out on a gold medal or just miss out on something, am I going to look back and have a May 2-4 weekend where I was at the cottage with my friends instead of training? Am I going to have something where I'm like, did that make the difference? Like, did those sessions, the ones that I skipped, did that really make the difference? So that was kind of my decision making on, those fork in the roads where I'm like, oh my God, I feel like crap today. I don't want to go. I just want to have a normal, lazy summer day. But You go anyway because you don't want to be still sitting on that same couch watching someone else up on that TV when you know it could have been you. So it just comes down to these choices at the time. Now, when it comes to performing, for me, it was about downplaying the importance of the event. So all of this has to do with, have you heard of the optimal level of arousal or adrenaline? Some people call it adrenaline.
I haven't heard about it in that circumstance, but I'm interested.
So optimal level of adrenaline. So if you have this bell curve on the y-axis, that's your level of performance, right? So you want to get the very top of the bell curve. And across that is your level of adrenaline. So if you do not have very much adrenaline, like you're not stressed, you're going to go up against an easy team, or it's just an easy day. Or maybe when you're writing, if you've been writing for a while, you're like, oh, it's just a day. I'm not up against any competition. I don't have a deadline. I don't have whatever. Then you are on the lower end of the bell curve and you're not going to be as productive. You're not going to perform as well because you're not in your optimal zone at the top. So for some people, it's these pep talks. That's why teams have these like rah pep talks, and these like people are listening to music to jack them up and to do whatever to get them to that level where they can get enough adrenaline to actually execute what they're physically able to execute. On the opposite end, if they are way too jacked up, if they are way too nervous, if they are way too stressed, then that's where they're going to be so nervous, anxious. They're going to make mistakes that they normally would never make. They're going to make choices that they normally wouldn't make. So that's basically their focus spots where they can kind of hyper-focus, where they can perform and all that stuff. So for me, for example, like I had a playlist I listened to all year during the World Cup season, but at the Olympics, there were some things that I had to adjust. And so I changed my playlist out and listened to we're talking about thousands of people there, and I don't need help getting my heart rate up because the environment is doing that for me. So by bringing that down again, it gets you kind of into that better headspace. And that takes practice. You kind of have to figure out what those are. But it's the same thing as anyone going into a big pitch. Like if they're in some marketing company and they're going to pitch to the biggest client they've ever had to pitch for, and they know all their information. But managing that curve helps put them in a place where they can execute or deliver the knowledge that they actually have, the skills or the knowledge or whatever that they actually have. If it's too low, not going to deliver. If it's too high, not going to deliver. So it's a matter of finding that kind of sweet spot. So I had to downplay the importance of the Olympics. I was like, okay, it's just another race. I never went to the athletes' lounge and watched other athletes compete. I consider myself very ignorant because I would never know how my other teammates are doing in other events because I didn't want to be in the room hearing how people are going to react to someone making a mistake or how other people are going to react to someone doing really well. Because no matter how much that is, that's all internalized. You do the same things as you do with any other race. You kind of talk to the same people. I call my family because I always call my family. You have those discussions beforehand. But imagine going into this pitch and your significant other sends you a message that you read right before going out there saying, good luck, babe. Counting on you. We need this. So go get it. We need this. Our house is going into bankruptcy. So I hope you land this contract. Like, oh, well, okay. Your whole adrenaline just went skyrocketing towards the end. And so sometimes it's managing that. That's why the recommendation is to avoid social media. Even positive messages can make someone more nervous, thinking that they're going to let someone down if they don't do well. So you never know. It's all about how people internalize things. But that is basically where the key is.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Because I have ADHD, and I was just talking about that because I do 3 episodes a week now. And sometimes it's a bit annoying. A day or two afterwards, I'll have a bunch of ideas of how I could have improved the episode. I'm like, oh, I wish I had more time for it. But then if I only did 1 episode a week, I feel like it would only be the day before I release the episode, I'd actually get around to writing it. And it wouldn't make any difference anyway, because if I haven't got the optimal arousal, I haven't got the deadline. And so that makes a lot of sense and why I do like deadlines. I just need to shift all my deadlines to be 1 week earlier before they actually get released. And then my problem would be solved.
But the deadline has to be real because you can't lie to yourself. So that's the same thing for me. I was a big procrastinator at university. I need deadlines and they need to be hard. When I give myself a deadline, it's not quite as effective as actually having to turn something into someone else.
Damn it. Yes, I agree. Yeah, another concept was just not messing up your routines. Like I don't usually eat before I go running. At least I didn't used to. But then I did an ultramarathon, but obviously to eat before that. And turns out because I'd never trained on the stomach where I'd eaten, I just had diarrhea the whole day. It was a nightmare. And so I actually had to start training after having eaten. Otherwise, like, I'm just going to have problems the entire time. One time I had a physics exam and I'd woken up late and my dad gave me a coffee. I'd never drunken coffee before in my life. I genuinely didn't answer a single question. I read every question like 10 times and I was really good at physics. I just could not sit and just don't mess with your routine before something important was my takeaways from both of those experiences. Interesting. I feel like I haven't actually asked you any of the cool stuff that you've done. What are the things that you don't get asked about the Olympics? Do you feel like everyone there knows what they're doing, or is there an element of a lot of people feel like they're just making stuff up and like, oh my God, I'm here?
I think there's that in every industry. I think some people get there and then all of a sudden they're like, what am I doing here? I can't believe I'm here. You know, not that they're making stuff up, but just like, oh my gosh. My teammate, for example, in Torino, my very first Olympics, I shared it in my book with her permission. So we came fourth and we missed standing on the podium by only 5/100ths of a second. There were articles written out saying, you know, Moyse loses medal due to pilot error. So I was trying to kind of take the onus on, like, you know, it's a team sport. So anyway, and I was like, you know what, fourth place after only 5 months of training, like, you know, 5 months of lifting weights and training and, you know, not so bad learning a new sport. So I was like, okay. But then 3 years later, they were putting out commercials for the next Olympics in Vancouver. And it was all about believe. That was the theme for the Vancouver was believe it. And my former teammate was on a commercial and all of a sudden I'm watching TV and up she comes. And I was like, oh, here she is. And she talked about how she felt more ready for Vancouver because in Torino, she just never really believed that she could do it because she'd always idolized Olympians. She grew up like watching the Olympics and idolizing Olympians. So of course, when she got there, all of a sudden she's like, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? Like, I can't compete with these people. But the people that we were competing against were the same people we'd competed against all year. So it was literally just the situation of the Olympic. It got into her head. And so that's why bringing that adrenaline back and downplaying the importance of the event and downplaying the people, like for rugby, for example, you're not competing against France. You're competing against another bunch of girls. But when you're competing against France, it just seems so much more insurmountable. So it's these stories that we play in our head and we just end up self-sabotaging what we're capable of.
Thanks. Okay. So I have 2 wrap-up questions. Firstly, what is one of your earliest memories?
I feel like I have a lot, but I have little. I remember doing concerts and dressing up and doing shows for our parents. I remember lining up teddy bears and pretending to be a photographer, take pictures of teddy bears. I also remember lying to my mom and having to send my friends home. It was something as simple and stupid as my brother coming and bringing us little cookies and passing them out to us. And I ate mine super fast. I think it was even those arrowroot cookies, like nothing fancy at all, but I scarfed mine down. And then I went out to the kitchen and I said I didn't get one. And my mom said, you didn't get a cookie? And I said, no. She said, are you sure? I said, yeah, I didn't get one. Well, your brother took cookies in for everybody. Well, he didn't give me one. So Heather, you're telling me that you did not eat a cookie? And I said, no. So can I get another one? She goes, come with me. And she took me by the hand, took me into the bathroom, boosted me up onto the sink so I could see in the mirror. And there were crumbs all over my face. So then I had to go into the other room and tell my friend that she had to leave because I told a lie. And so that was it. Like ownership, right? It's consequences, but it's also owning why. Like not just telling her she had to leave. You know, it's not blaming my mother. It was my fault that she has to leave because I told a lie. And that's probably why I have such a strong feeling of accountability, ownership of our choices and the consequences of our choices and stuff. There are a whole bunch of memories.
Okay. Then the other question is, what is one of the kindest things someone's ever done for you?
There's so many kind things. I don't know. I feel very fortunate. Even messages I receive from people, like after having read my book or after hearing me speak on stage or something where they will reach out and say that something I said has impacted them. That is kindness to me because they don't have to do that. They don't have to let me know that something I said helped them. So it's them going out of their way to do that.
Thank you. Great interview. It was wonderful to have you on the show. And do you want anyone to follow you anywhere or what's the best way if someone wants to contact you?
Yeah, if people want to contact me, they can reach out to Heather@heathermoyse.com, or they can go straight to my website, which is just heathermoyse.com. It's just easy. Or they can go through my Instagram, which again is just under my name, Heather Moyse. Nothing fancy, nothing confusing. If people are interested in my book, same thing. It's all on my website, whether they want the audiobook, soft cover, hardcover. There are links that can take them where they want to go. Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, they're all under the same handle of Heather Moyse. So I'm pretty easy to find.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much. It's been wonderful.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for Heather coming on the show today and providing so many cool mental models and ideas to get out of our own self-limiting beliefs and practices and operate closer to our potential. It was a total joy to have such a legend on the show. As she said, one of the kindest things that you can do for others is to not be a naysayer and encourage them in their crazy ideas or let them know that they've done a good job. So do reach out to her if you thought she was cool or if she brightened your day at all. And do feel free to leave a good comment or review anywhere that you listen to the show. And on that, life is too short to let naysayers and lobsters in your life bring you down or to lie to your mum. So be kind to yourself and your mum and take as many opportunities as possible to climb trees and smile at strangers. Thank you so much for listening.
Go you!
Your consistency to reach the end of an episode is legendary.
My hero!
If you have any ideas or feedback for the show, I'm always interested to hear from you.
You're the best!
Studies show we need time for information to sink in, so I'm going to give you a 5-second pause, silence, to reflect on one idea from the show before you jump back into your busy life. Ready and go.
How many discounts does USAA Auto Insurance offer? Too many to say here. Multi-vehicle discount, safe driver discount, new vehicle discount, storage discount, legacy.
How many discounts will you stack up? Tap the banner or visit USAA.com/auto discounts. Restrictions apply.